Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions as we start to wind down Q4. I'm here with Kata Phipps. Been wanting to do one of these for a while, but I think the timing is better when we drop this after the 22nd and everyone's taking a bit of downtime for Christmas. So welcome back to the show, Kata.
Thank you.
So today we're going to focus in around mental health. Kata is a former clinical psychologist as well. And I think it'd be good to get the two perspectives as well, from a men's perspective and for a woman's perspective as well. And obviously with Kata's credentials and the work that she's done in a therapeutic setting, I think that'd be good, because I think we've done stuff where we've talked around guys with mental health, and we did some stuff back in COVID when we were doing the dailies. But I really want to kind of get an understanding of the female perspective from an entrepreneurial sense. Yeah. So from your perspective, and we're going to generalize here. So before we do any cancelling, it's not TikTok. This isn't about being toxic and trying to get clicks and views. We just really want to kind of dig in so we can help spot the signs on either side. So from a woman's perspective, and we'll talk about in the entrepreneurial sense, running businesses on Amazon, what does the essence of mental health look like for a woman when she's struggling? What are the signs?
Well, I think that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, women really shine in their ability to multitask and push through tough times, put the head down and get the house ready, the business through the line, and keep pushing in spite of the difficulties, which we're all very familiar with this year in particular. Yeah. And definitely the way in which we internalize, suffer and deal with these difficulties is, I would say, 100% different from a male and a female perspective. I almost feel like, and not sure if you agree with this, but I almost feel like females are a little bit more post-traumatic. We take we take care of the emergency, we push through, and it's only when things are sort of dealt with and the children are taken care of and the husband and the household or the family or the friends, is that when we truly crash. So I do believe that this year in particular is going to start hitting really hard the female side of entrepreneurs of our industry sometime around, January, February, March, as opposed to what I've observed in the male entrepreneur world that I'm, involved in, which already sort of starts to come in September. I could already spot burnout in them, whether the ladies are still sort of pushing through, but it's coming.
And I think also we've got to look at, and we are talking about the nuclear family, and I know how people have different points of view. I think there's also the added pressure of the raising of the family, how fathers and mothers engage differently with their children, right? So like what you said, they'll put themselves last.
Yes.
Then there's the mum guilt, right? Working too many hours and not giving enough attention to the children. Then there's the duties of the house, not saying that it doesn't get split, the labour and stuff. In some cases it does, some cases it doesn't. I think that depends on the partnership. People talk about 50-50.
Yeah.
The way I see it is 100-100. So what it is teamwork. And you play your position. But then, I've been with my wife, Cheryl, 31 years. So we are in different times and we've passed through the different decades. But I've always found that is a difficult part. It goes down to divorce as well.
Yes.
I think ladies had this thing where the emotional carry of the relationship, the burden of the children, and in some cases depends on the man.
Yeah.
It's like having another child around to take care of, but that would depend on the man, and that's not every man. And so,
arguably. Arguably.
No, I mean, I see what you're saying, but like I see where that comes in, and we'll get into some of the stuff that you see online where I think a lot of the content is made by people that haven't healed.
Yes.
And that's the stuff that goes viral, not the stuff that's generally useful or intuitive and gives you a great understanding. But going back to that situation with women, like especially if they're traveling on the road and they don't get to see their kids as much, depending on, if they're traveling to events and stuff. But what are these telltale signs in the physical sense? If someone was to spot that lady there is going through the darkest hour just before dawn. You explained that they put themselves last.
Yes.
Family first, children, maybe the house,
So very broad question, because there's telltale signs for spotting oneself heading to a crash. And for those that care for one, to be able to tell that you are about to struggle are very different. And that's the one thing that we neglect the most as business women, is putting ourselves first and be able that we're functional enough to be able to communicate that we are struggling or what our needs are, right? We're not cognitively aware that we're heading towards a wall.
Yeah.
That's the burnout wall, the guilt wall, or whatever it is that we're going to be dealing with, right? We don't stop and think because we are on go, go, go mode.
Yeah.
And when we do catch a minute, is the children and the guilt of, oh, shoot, I haven't done this. I haven't cleaned the windows, or I haven't called the plumber or whatever. And then it's the husband and the supermarket and the groceries, and, you wish you could have made better meals and all of these things, but it's never you time. And we don't prioritize that. Yet we feel all the burnout. However, how your friends, how your partner, how even your female friends within the industry can spot that you're not quite that well is very telling. You are short temper. You are brief. Your messages, even your WhatsApp messages, are a 1-word, 2-word answer, or they're coming in later. And the thing is, sometimes it's really so useful for you to say, hey, Kata, just checking in. You didn't get back to me. Is everything okay? Because that in itself will allow your friends and the people you care for within the industry to stop and think, am I okay?
Well, I noticed that with our friendship as well. There are times where you don't respond.
Yeah.
But then I think of boundaries and give you that distance. And then I might check in with Matt or then follow up. Because I think there's, with a lady, if I'm allowed to say this, there's this cascade of emotions.
Yes.
Right? And when you're in that moment of emotion, that is your real world, regardless if it's fact, fiction, it doesn't matter. You are living that moment. This is why you should never invalidate a woman's feelings. So when that moment is there, that moment eventually passes.
Yes.
And then there is a time and a place.
Correct.
Rather than pushing that situation.
Yes.
So yeah.
Sorry, and something that in our friendship, for instance, has worked really well is I know myself, and I know that if I was to talk to you while I'm feeling my feelings and I'm allowing myself the space to feel the feelings, I will fall apart. And sometimes I cannot afford to fall apart because I have a full day tomorrow and I need to be functional. So I consciously postpone it till the weekend. And after the weekend, I reach back to you and I give you the breakdown of the week. Yeah. This and that happened and whatever. But it takes a minute to put in the work to get to know yourself or oneself and recognize that what actually is going to make me feel better if I can push through this, so then I can take enough time for myself. But at the same time, communicate to my husband. Yeah. Hey, I don't know why, but I'm feeling blah, or I'm feeling something. I don't know what it is. I just need some space. Yeah.
And I think with you as well is that you put a brave face on everything. So there's a lot going on, but you won't share until after the fact. It's almost like you've developed a protocol where you're going through it, but then you'll either go silent or don't address it, but then you address it after when you're emotionally in a different place to talk about it. Like you said about falling apart and stuff.
Yeah.
But the least that you do that, I think with guys is that they don't always address it because they don't know how to process emotions, right?
Yeah.
So I use an example. I can't remember. I should credit to someone. But if you think men's emotions, we have a broad spectrum, but often what you see is just a very limited amount because that's what's been discussed. But if you watch someone at a football match and you watch the array of emotions, there's 15, 20 emotions going on through that. Excitement, fear, desperation, last minute goal, euphoria, sadness, anger, frustration. There's all these different things, and we call it emotions on a clock. And I think with a lot of guys there, they struggle with emotional literacy because when you say a guy emotions, it's like, what's the matter with you, kind of. But I think what people don't understand is the difference between what they're saying there is in a weak sense, right? It's more to do with having emotional literacy because to know how to channel it and understand it. And I think that's the biggest struggle to get guys to understand today. Because when I sit down with guys and we say, I use the word emotional literacy because that's what you're working through to develop that.
Yeah.
And the first reaction is this. And I say to them, a man without emotional literacy is a discredit to society. He's a dangerous man. He's a weak man. And then they listen and they're on board. And then when we go through it, they understand that because they're able to understand the dynamics in between them and what it is. Because some people is going to come out passive aggressive. They're going to be angry. They're going to be snappy because they don't know how to process it. If you understand how to process that, what happens is you become more stable, less erratic, right? Yeah. Especially if you're leadership in the workplace, and it goes for men and women. But I think that's one of the biggest things that hurdle for a lot of guys, and the thought of having it thrown back in their face.
Yes.
Right.
I agree with you. And I think that a lot of what perhaps many of you are going to experience or have experienced this year from a male perspective is detachment, emotional detachment.
In what respect? From relationships or your business?
Both. So let's say this, it's known as that it's been a very challenging year, and the sophistication of being an successful e-commerce seller, whether it's Amazon, TikTok, whatever, has been tremendous. Now, we were talking about this recently. You almost need a PhD now to understand all the different fees, competition, and how the game has really changed. What has happened with that is that there are a lot of factors we cannot control. Yeah. And when we remove control from a very successful business person, we put someone in the middle of the ocean with literally no aids that's not used to not have control. But there's so many factors right now that we haven't been able to control in our business that the emotional detachment comes into place because they need to control something.
Yeah.
So what can you control? You can control saying no to your family, no to your partner, completely detaching because you don't even understand what is it that you're feeling. And perhaps there are some feelings of failure that haven't been internalized because you feel that you didn't attain that growth that your company was, doing, or you feel like this year perhaps the profits are not there, yet the work feels like it was double or triple, and all of these things internalized and without putting words into these feelings are going to impact you on a personal level.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that it's very, very dangerous because people will then become enthralled on, I'm not capable of this, I'm not successful, rather than openly discussing how tough this year has been for everyone, and not just in e-commerce, but everything from investments to many other things. And not discussing them means that many people, men in particular, are going to internalize this as a personal reflection of their abilities when it's not.
Yeah, I think what you got to look at as well, and again, people might not like to hear this, and I think this is a big struggle for some guys until they get it, right? There's a difference between the love of your mother, which is unconditional, and the love of your partner, which is a romantic setting, right? And men have to be useful. And what I mean by that, and that's good for them as well. So when you see a lot of people that say they're stuck, is because they maybe lack purpose in their life. So as men, we need two things, appreciation and respect. Whereas I would say, broadly speaking, a woman needs to be heard, has good quality attention from the right person, people, and to feel validated and seen, right? So there's two ends of the things. So I think a lot of the thing with, let's say you're an entrepreneur, it's a theory, it's not scientifically backed or by the psychology community. But I think with entrepreneurs, you're either proving something to yourself or it's a big fuck you to somebody else. But then you go past the point of winning. So you might not be conscious of it. Let's say you were bullied at school or something happened and you was like, I'm going to teach all of them. And then you become a millionaire. That was all you'd already won, but people go beyond and they go, I want 10 million, I want 50 million, I want 100 million, I want a billion, I want this. And it never ends. But then you've got to get to the point where you've got to bring it back to the self and like what is important, right? So I think with guys, it's respect and appreciation. So if you're in a situation where things are not going well for you, and some people build their self-esteem into their business or whatever they're doing, and I think when that takes a knock, so does their self-esteem, and it's trying to understand that you are separate from that. But if you built your life by saying, until I get here, I am not worthy. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs' drive comes from the fear of failure as well, which can be channeled in a good way.
100%.
But there's also the dark side of that. Because if you do fail, how do you handle that failure? Because it feels like death for some people. So they go in that downward spiral. So it's really trying to capture a balance of what is important to you.
Yeah, 100%. But it's not really failure until you stop trying, some will argue, right? But some people are very tough on themselves. Well, you're quite correct, especially the people that don't know what is the ultimate goal or what is it that they're trying to achieve. And not just like the life goal, right? But rather, what is my short-term goal? What is my medium-term goal? And what I believe to be the ultimate goal, which will change. I can guarantee that that's going to be the case. It is different. And that awareness of what is it that I'm working towards, it's what truly allows you to either have that control that's required to feel, good within your own skin, regardless of the industry, how the business went or what have you, or not, and that lack of awareness of what is it that we're working towards. Everyone in the industry is working towards having a successful business and potentially an exit and blah, blah, blah. That's not really a goal. That is so broad. It's like saying, I just want to live a healthy life, have a family and die very old, happy. That's not a goal. What is it? What is it? The goal that you can actually get excited for, work towards, and have some level of control towards. It's a year goal, and not having that awareness means that a lot of people are shooting for the stars, and no wonder they feel like they're failing because you can't control what happened this year, and we cannot control what's going to happen with tariffs and this and that and everything that scares people. So that's when we fall on the procrastination wagon, which is another way of dealing with fear and all of those things, right? So just perpetuating the fact that you feel like a failure internally, even if you never recognize or pull the word failure associated to how you feel, that's really what it is. Losing the sense of self in a successful way.
That's the thing. I think people do get to the point of losing the sense of self. I mean, probably a good example would be, let's say that you're an 8-figure seller, drops down to 7. Or you're a 7-figure seller. Because you think of what's wrapped around that is status.
100%.
Right? So if you might make different decisions based on losing your 7 or 8 figure status, then that invokes shame, which is then turned on themselves, which can lead to a minor level of self-hatred, if you like, which then leads into the procrastination and other things, bad relationships with their family and stuff. But he's trying to understand, and I think that comes down to a lot of upbringing, because of where your self-esteem is based on, everyone don't come out unscathed, right? So, all parents are different. Some people from single parent families and stuff. But I think that's the other thing, is how regulated is your self-esteem without relying on external validation to prop it up. That's the other thing as well. And you've probably had to deal with that over the years as well.
Yeah.
Because there were a time when I was younger, I was like, even go back to the music industry, in my head, I wanted to be the #1 DJ in the world. I didn't get there, but I managed to fly around the world at a Kiss show and all those kind of things. But you're always ramping and ramping and ramping. I want more, I want more. And then you get there and you're like, okay, is that it? And you go, and then you set the new goal, then the new goal, then the new goal. And it's like, where does that stop where you get the equilibrium? And that comes back to the self-control and understanding about yourself as well.
I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to be very controversial. That means that you're not stopping enough to reflect. What is it that you actually achieve, and what do you really want to go next?
Yeah.
And that's tough, especially in years like this one, when there's so many things are, again, beyond your control, that probably drove you not to attain what you wanted to attain. And you're going to focus on that and that alone, instead of what you were able to push through regardless or in spite of these difficulties. Yeah. Which will be the healthy way to deal with this, right?
Yeah, but then I think that comes back down to the self-awareness thing. Unless you've done a little bit of work in that department, you don't know. Some people are completely oblivious to some of their own behaviours. We're not all 100% self-aware, but you can try to be. You can try and surround yourself with people that, I always have a saying, like the closest people to me, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear at the risk of costing the relationship, because otherwise I'm just an enabler. Yeah. And I need that as well. We all need people that put the brakes on us.
Yeah.
If everyone blows smoke up your arse and enables your bad behaviours, then where are they going to be when your behaviours overlap into the real world? And something does happen. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
So I think it's important to have people around you that keep you grounded and put the brakes on. Otherwise, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking of the safety of awareness and being, conscious that you have relationships that you can nurture to become that, to become that thing where you can say anything within the boundaries of respect, obviously. Yeah, but it's a safe place. Like the friends I love the most are the ones I can say, you know what, I'm really tired. I don't want to be having this conversation. I know it sounds like an asshole, but bye. And it's safe, and we're not going to fall out, and we're going to be okay.
And some people would get offended by that.
Yeah.
Of course. But then I think that's once you understand the dynamics of relationships. Like when I come to stay down here, sometimes I don't see you for a day and a half or a day, or it's just passing. Do you see what I mean?
Like because 3 days. Catch up in the coffee machine.
Catch up at the coffee machine.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. But then you haven't got that kind of guilt. And I think that's important when you've got that dynamic, so you can understand relationships like that. It's going back to what you're saying, is you're able to be truthful with people.
But anyone can. The thing is, we are in this train of success, and we go to this conference and everybody speaks the same thing, how to just be successful and make more money and get more profits, and nobody's talking about the real thing, which is like, yeah, you have to wake up every day and say your goals and arrange your schedule and your calendar, whatever, but there are only 2 questions truly that matter every day, which is why and how.
Yeah.
Why am I going to do what I'm going to do today? Just because I have to, just because it's going to make me feel better, procrastinating for 8 hours in the computer instead of doing one with intention. And how am I going to get to what I want to achieve by the end of today? Not next week or, And that alone will train you to become very much aware.
Yeah.
Because your need today won't be the same as tomorrow. And in a week's time, you're going to be able to say, actually, why am I going to work all day? I don't have to work all day. I'm going to go out and get some fresh air, or I'm going to go see mom, or I'm going to go see blah. You know what I mean? And naturally, just doing that simple exercise will turn anyone that's not emotionally educated, if you wish, or literate in emotions, just to understand today. You don't need to become a savant of, I can put words into my every feeling, but just today. What is it that you're doing and why? And how are you going to get there? Very simple. That alone is a great exercise to become more aware. And it's not that difficult, is it?
No. I think what it is when you start to become self-aware of certain things and it's pointed out to you, for some people it's like, wow, and it hits them like a thunderbolt and they don't know how to take it. But then you have to push through it. And when you're doing that stuff, it's not linear. One thing I want to get onto is talk about therapy. You've worked in that setting. And I'm a big believer, and I'll put this in the book, is that talk therapy doesn't work for most guys. And then you look at the industry, it's like over 90% of therapists are female. And then you look at self-deletion, 75% of self-deletion is men. But that disconnect in the middle is that I think that, and maybe I'm completely wrong and everyone's different, but I think if a guy was like, he wants to, like when the guy tries to fix your problems or your friend's problems, but really what she wants to do is talk, get it out. She doesn't want it fixed. She wants to be heard. But he goes straight into fix mode.
Yep.
There's a good example, would you say? So talk therapy, I think it was it Jung and Nietzsche, that was developed, talk therapy, where the lady turned around and said, can you shut up? I'm still talking. And that was the early stages. We're going back hundreds, maybe 100 plus years. But that's from my understanding how it works, is that that's talk therapy and you're able to talk through things. I think with a guy, I know healing is not linear, but if you said to a guy, right, come in, we're going to fix this. You're going to do this, and this. And by the end of the year, you'll get X, Y, or Z based on what you put into it.
Yeah.
Most guys would be going for it, right? And I believe, because you've helping solve the problem. Because generally guys are fixers, and although there's emotion there, they fix with logic. And I think that's where the struggle often comes. And the other thing is, if these guys don't go to therapy and do the work, or they can't get access to a man, like you may want to do certain therapy with a woman for certain reasons without saying it, the words out loud, it's about how you feel, because it's a safe space, right?
Yeah.
And so the way I see that, what possibly happens, because if you think about it, if they can't open up to their a female friend, family member, their partner, how are they going to get to therapy to open up there as well, where therapy may be designed to be more talk and they want to fix the problem rather than talk about it? Because the talking might come after, but they might not entertain it. And I think that's where guys climb up and there's a slight disconnect. You're the clinical psychologist. Put me back in my box.
Well, I was just listening to what you were saying, and all I could think of is we go back to trying to put men in an environment that is not by nature the area of expertise. I know very few men that have been brought up understanding how to name and word their feelings and their emotions. Nobody wants to be put in an uncomfortable place, let alone by choice. The only reason men go to therapy is as a last resource, marriage counseling, because your child is in trouble at school and it's a requirement so they don't get expelled, or because you really, really have struggled beyond the point of, I'm thinking, not wanting, I don't like the word suicide. I like to say something that a friend of mine actually told me, funnily enough, not a psychologist, which is not wanting to feel the way you do any longer.
Yeah. Well, that's the checkout point.
That's the checkout point, but that comes after. So who in the right mind, and I'm thinking from a male perspective and from the male clients I ever had during my therapy years, wants to put themselves willingly in a position where they're not in control, they don't know what the answers are, let alone a woman may potentially be the one guiding the session. There is everything that somewhat emasculate men to put themselves willingly in that position. And of course, that's changing now as the times are, these topics are more out in the open. But 10 years ago, it was a no. It was very difficult. And that's why, you just have to be very intentional with how is it that you're going to approach these things. However, a lot of men are investing in audiobooks and doing the work and going to Thailand and doing, well, yeah.
What are they doing in Thailand?
I'm not talking about the kind of trip that you're thinking. I'm talking about the health retreat.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And the meditation and the sweat lodge and the cold ice bath and everything that sort of make them feel like they're working on themselves. But truly, it's keeping you busy so you don't work on what you're actually thinking, right? And there is some level of freedom for the ones that do ask themselves every morning, why and how? Why am I doing what I'm doing and how am I going to get there? And that freedom is what allows you to let go of things that you thought you wanted, but now realize, actually, that's not who I am now. That's who I was a year ago. I don't longer need the 8-figure business. I just want a smaller team that I can actually have quality relationships with or have an easier life or whatever, or delegate it all or bring in a partner and I'm happy with 50% of what I'm currently, doing and blah, blah, blah. Or I want to do something else, But awareness is what brings you to that. But yes, you're right. Therapy is not really and also is there, I don't have time for this. Right? Business stuff. I don't have time for this. I have 100 other things I need to be doing right now. I can't just sit and entertain an hour of talk. That's not going to help me. So it is that I can do it all by myself, believe. Right?
Yeah. But the thing is, this is I've never contemplated it myself. We all had tough times, but I've never contemplated self-deletion. It's never been in my vocabulary, honestly, ever. I've had to bury 2 of my children. Lots have gone on, but I've never contemplated it. And it baffles me because, every few weeks, and this includes school friends or people that I knew, you see it on Facebook when they go, gone too young. Yeah. And straight away, suicide. And I spoke to a good friend of mine, UK seller, and he was telling me about a situation with his friend. He was down the pub, he was laughing and joking, gone. And he planned everything. And I know, some of them are looking at that, go, I think they get to this stage, that dark place. Well, I'm not useful anymore. Going back to men need to feel and be useful. Yeah. Right? And what they'll end up doing is they'll look at, I'm covered insurance. At least they're taken care of. And it's almost like they meticulously plan it without telling anyone. And boom, they're gone.
But again, you questioning, did that person not want to live any longer? And the answer is probably they very much wanted to leave. They wanted to stop feeling the way they did.
They wanted to stop feeling the way that they did. They're too embarrassed to speak about that or don't know the outlet to speak about that. And so they turn that on themselves. Because I think with some guys, or maybe a lot of guys, they've always got a lot going on in their head, right? Same with ladies, you've got your way of dealing with things as well. It's not mutually exclusive. Sometimes it's the other end of the Venn diagram. Do you see what I mean? And I think this is what's always puzzled me is like, where do we join the dots back from the disconnect? So if over 90% of therapists are women, why is that? Why we should ask this question, not that it should be judged. You're a female therapist and you should go and use them, but it comes down to that person's comfort. And I think what we have to be careful of this gender war thing that people likes to flag up. But as a lady, you might want to go in on a certain subject, which we're saying the words. You might not want to sit with a guy. Why? It's a safe space. So if a guy doesn't want to sit with a lady, that should be a choice as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's about their journey to heal. Yeah. And so they're always going to have that fear around it. And with a lesser distribution of that, but then why are more men not going into therapy and training as well? And what's interesting, we've got this mental health crisis, but you've never had more help today. Think about 20, 30,
available,
40 years.
Yeah.
The availability is there, but it just puzzles me because there's obviously a disconnect, and men should use both male and female therapists. That's not the judgment. It's not a gender thing. It's just, why is this happening? And where do we get these dots joined?
I'm not very sure you need to get them joined. In my opinion is that
maybe I'm reading too many areas and piecing it together for myself.
I think there are more female therapists because there is a natural ability to comprehend emotions and understand, therefore the inclination to go this path when it comes to studying and getting your degree and whatever. It's there earlier than perhaps a male therapist will have.
Yeah.
Because it's also true that there's a lot more psychiatrists that were to become a doctor and then realize they're actually really into mental health, so they go that route. And that's okay. But also, I don't really think it's like asking why there are more male minors than there are women. And it comes down to, strength and how you build and what your interests are.
But we do live in a society where you have to be very careful with those, because you say, well, it's equal, which it is. But there's the equal opportunity, but it doesn't mean that male or female decides they want to do that. They've got the opportunity to.
They have
just
the
choose not
exactly.
to. Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, why would I choose a trade where I'm going to be physically challenged?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to always be behind. If I wanted to, can I do it? Yes, I can. I have the opportunity. I just chose not to. But I think that women are brought up more aware of their emotion, and therefore psychology and therapy. And, in the UK, you have so many different little areas and short training as well as, psychology nurse and whatnot. And it's a thing that is just comes easier, and people may believe, and they're wrong, by the way, that it will be an easier trade to learn. But yeah, I just think it comes down to level of maturity and who mature first. And we all know it's a fact that women do at an early age.
Yeah. What about boundaries? Let's talk boundaries, because I think people are not always aware that either they're crossing them, and I'm not talking about in a physical sense. People don't always understand there's intellectual boundaries.
Yep.
There's physical boundaries. There's mental boundaries. There's various things. There's time boundaries. There's the boundaries of how close someone stands next to you. Do you think that when you look around, do you see that people need to develop that area a bit more, boundaries?
I think people need to develop more understanding their own boundaries.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than, because the other one comes natural, right? You're brought up being taught respect. Yeah. Which is sort of boundaries of the other people. The ones that people never master, and I keep saying that, is the ones of oneself. And most of my most dearest friends have zero boundaries whatsoever. And you and I share some really good friends that we both know have zero boundaries, and their lives
that's also the lack
over.
of self-awareness as well.
Well, yes. And I think they are aware to some extent that they have no boundaries, but they continuously choose to until they hit the burnout wall, right? That's going to be the big wake-up call. But being aware of your own boundaries. Again, what is it that I want to achieve today? I don't know, today is Monday. I want to have a very productive day of work. Or today is Sunday. I want to achieve nothing. I want to achieve me. I want to watch TV, have a nice long shower, whatever it is. Those are my boundaries. I'm not going to get out of the house. Then your child or your partner or your friend rings. Hey, want to go out for a meal? It's not really what you wanted to, but you don't want them to go alone, and you don't want to be perceived as negative. And you need to spend time or quality time with your kids, and it's the weekend, so you're going to give in and go out, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to resent it, and you're going to...
That's the thing that people lack boundaries.
You're going to put the little coin of resentment in the bank, and coming Friday, someone's going to look at you funny, and it's not even with intention, and you're going to fly off the handle.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is when people lack boundaries in the sense of codependency, whether that's light touch or deep codependency, there will be a level of resentment there because they want to say no, but they don't want to because they're worrying about what they may think at the cost of their own self.
Yeah.
Right? There's difference between being selfish and having boundaries. And I think that what leads to resentment, because they sit there and they go, I did this and I did this, and they just don't appreciate me or respect me, and then they resent the other person because of the lack of their own boundaries with themselves.
I agree with that, 100%. Yeah. And that is when the female male characteristic of an entrepreneur really do come to light, I think, because men really struggle to set boundaries because the more you work, the more you're putting in towards your success, which validate you as a provider, as a keeper, as a carer, all these more male traits that society has imposed on you guys, right? Where the women, and this is something I really want to talk about that you mentioned, selfishness. Why is it so wrong to be selfish?
No, selfish in the sense of taking no consideration for others. Selfishness is being greedy as well, right? Selfishness is more to do with the fact that all you do is think about yourself at all given times. But giving time to yourself isn't selfish. Having a time boundary isn't selfish. It's how you apply that and how you respond to the person that's asking. You know, for instance, like I always say is no should be the number one word you'd be using in your vocabulary. Okay?
Yeah.
And I use it all the time. But I don't go, no. I always say, listen, the answer's no. I've got this to do, this to do, this to do. But however, and then, does that make sense? So I've set the boundary, I've shown respect. And tone matters, especially when you speak to women versus men. That tone thing is not always what you say to a lady. My wife will say it, my daughter will say it, all my female friends, you know, most of my friends are women. It's a tone that is always heard as well, not just the words. It's how you do it, I think, is important.
But for women in particular, that those boundaries, as you were saying, are very much felt as selfishness. And let me tell you something. The only way that I personally got over not feeling resented with the people that weren't imposing on me that I needed to give up my time and my life and my every breath for them. It was myself imposing those things on me, was to be okay with being a little bit selfish. And this is what I want to get to. If calling yourself selfish every now and then, even though it may be the wrong word for it, it's when you're going to need to become a little bit more aware of your own needs, then that's okay. Now, being truly selfish is a lack of balance, that you only do you, right? And that's not what I'm talking about. But sometimes you do need to overcome the guilt by allowing yourself to do you, because if you don't look after you, nobody will, not even your therapist. I recently had this very humbling experience, believe it or not, where going back to the topic of male and female power and all that, and like within my doing in the company I work in, it's sort of a very powerful, highly driven people that are very successful, and it's quite hard to establish authority within that group to get my,
What you mean for you in your position, because of who they are, entrepreneurs, it's very different to employees working for you in the company.
100%. If they are employees that I employ directly, but these are friends that are very successful in their own rights, and I have the responsibility to see certain projects through, on which times I have to actually be an asshole and call people out, and it's part of the job, right? So it's very hard, but at the same time, I was like, why is it that the person before me, who was a male, didn't have this issue? Why is it that authority came natural? What is it that everybody just did without questioning, and you guys all pushing back and whatever? And I was talking about this with a friend, and my friend very insightfully said, it's because he didn't care to be perceived as an authority. And maybe you do. And it made me realize that the issue of me not feeling that they're taking my authority seriously when in a particular thing, it wasn't an issue of them not taking me seriously. It was an issue of me doubting that I had the same authority as he did just because I'm a woman. And we often joke about it. We're like, oh, if you don't have a dick, you won't be heard. You have to shout louder or whatever in this industry. But the truth is, it was on me, and it was.
Were you projecting?
I was projecting. Because having the need for my authority to be recognized was wrong to begin with.
Right, because of the context, you're going, I'm an authoritative, right? And they're not behaving as...
they're not listening to me like they used to listen to this man,
right? And it's because of your attachment to the authority thing, which was the bit where it went wrong, rather than people following your lead from a careless point of view, not careless, but wrong word, from a point of view that you don't care. You're just saying this is going to be done, and then it gets done. But because you're focused on being the authority in the room,
I was wrong.
You was too focused on that.
I was too focused on being, for my authority to be respected, acknowledged, and almost fed back to me, like I understand, you're my boss type situation.
Right.
And when I said, why is it that people are not doing this? And my friend says, well, he didn't really ever need it to be told, like he was the boss. That's probably why. And I'm like, what an excellent point. I don't need to be told because I am.
Yeah.
So fuck that. And I'm like, I'm being the asshole. I'm the one with the need, actually. It was never a them problem, it was me.
Right.
But
then someone brought it to you, going back to the point, people that can be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right, rather than indulge you in all your whims. They told you the truth. You got an insight about yourself, created more self-awareness. You made the change in the behaviour, and then you got the results that you wanted. Yeah,
because they had a point. I was being the asshole, like it's completely unrelated to the performance, to the results, if you wish. And I think that's a little bit that we all need to do, because we're in this train of success, and success is often associated with getting everything right. And the more you're aware of what you actually go wrong and work on that, the better you become by default.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but it's so liberating at the same time. And you really kind of go through life easy when you're putting in the work, because you're just doing your best with what you've got at any given moment.
Yeah. Yeah, because our perception can also be clouded. This is men and women, so our perception could be clouded because of what's going on inside. That projection that isn't really what's happening. That's how you're perceiving that happening. And then, but you've got to be careful, and that can run into gaslighting and blah, blah, blah. But I think what you're saying is you've got to trying to avoid falling on your own psychology.
100%. And you need to be both, if you're going to be self-aware, don't just be self-aware because of what your needs are. You need to work on yourself so you can interact with the world around you better.
What do you think in terms of when it comes to family, children? I'll be open. I'll give you my example. I think, and I want to get your, because we briefly touched on it with female entrepreneurs with children, mum guilt, getting all the stuff done and stuff. I think the other side is the lack of awareness for guys, and me included. I had to win mine back a few years ago, which we'll get into, daddy issues and all that kind of stuff. But for guys, not all, but for guys, they're so focused. It's like being a provider, take care of the family. And so in their mind, they think they're doing enough. But then their children are not looking for the next iPad or presents. They want your presence and your time and your attention. And I think that's where we can miss as guys until we become aware. And you knew about it. I mean, we're going back 4 or 5 years, and my daughter turned around and says, I hate you and I don't respect you. And I knew from that day on, things had to change. And that change had to be me. Because I was actually creating, you know, like people talk about daddy issues. I always try and explain to people, it's like, you'll mock a woman, or you'll say, stay away from her, she's got daddy issues. But it's the father had to be the one that caused the father wound, which is the actual clinical term, from my understanding, of daddy issues. So it starts with the father. And then the guys that are complaining about the girls with daddy issues is because they're carrying their own wound, because their attraction to the saviour and you know, white knighting, if you like, to save that person. So it ends up in it going round in a cycle. But I think that's one things we have to kind of address is when we're away or when we're focused, is that we carve out time. You know, I've got a beautiful relationship with my daughter now, but I lost her at one point. But in my mind at that time, I was just working my ass off to provide a better life for everyone.
Yeah.
But at the cost of the attention that my daughter would need to be around me and me be present, not on the laptop, not looking at the phone, but where we sit down and I see her in the way that she wants to be seen.
But isn't that the same I was telling you about being humble? Because how self-righteous of us to assume that because we are providing a better life, a better future, private education, university studies or travels or whatever, that suffices for our children, or for our partners, husband, wives, girlfriend, boyfriends, whatever. Do we ever stop and ask?
No, what we project onto our children, we had this life, so you're going to have this life.
Yeah.
But we don't ask them. And the other thing is, it's unconditional, right? So we brought these children into the world. Anything, the way they behave, everything about them is your fault. Everything about them, because they were thrusted into this world. They didn't choose to come here. They were born, right? You decide to have children. They are your responsibility. But as they get older, I don't believe that you should look to your children and say, well, I brought you up and you should do this for me. It's like, no, it's unconditional.
No.
And you hear that, you know, when someone says, you only get one mum, or you only, you know, or one father, or whatever it may be. And then they kind of put that pressure on their children to say, I gave you a good life, I sacrificed for you. And it's like, no, you made a choice. They didn't choose to be here. You made that choice. You know?
Much like our fellow entrepreneurs choose.
So as we wrap now, what do we say to people that men or women that are struggling?
Well, first of all, it's okay. I think we all are to some extent. Normalize use the opportunity to speak up, to normalize that, and as an educational point for yourself and those that care for you and that you care for. Sometimes all it takes is for you to show a tiny little bit of what's perceived as vulnerability to give people the space to open up as well. To show your children, to communicate to your family, to communicate to those that you care for, not what you're going through, but what you're feeling in the moment. There's going to be a lot of stress related to the end of the year when the world pushes you to reflect on what you achieved.
Yeah.
But nobody really speaks about, let's reflect on what didn't work out the way we expected it. Why was that? What can I change within myself so that it doesn't happen again? And guess what? If there was nothing else you could have done better with what you had, then that is totally fine, because you're still here, you push through, and there is a new opportunity to start again with the learnings that we've gathered. But if we do not reflect on what didn't work out, what wasn't all happy and social media friendly and Instagrammable, we'll never grow. Yeah.
No, agreed. And I think if I'm speaking in terms of guys here, is that message me or message someone that's independent of friends, family that you can talk to that has no passment or judgment on you. Because I think that is the first step for a lot of guys when they go through stuff and they go into the mental man cave and disappear in there and come up with all weird and wonderful solutions or zero solutions. There's always a way out of everything. Sometimes you don't see it, but others will help you see that, you know. So
Yes.
if you're having it hard, you know, I had it through COVID. I don't know why, but people come to me. It's all it's all confidential. Just reach out. I'm happy to have a chat. If that's the difference between a struggle for you, and I know we talked about boundaries, but there's levels, you know. But if someone's struggling, I've done it with a lot of men, is walked them off that line, if you like, and got them to see a clearer picture and that they are warranted to still be around. They are useful, but the way that they're looking at the situation, and because they've taken so many hits.
Yes. And it's only so many hits one can take without actually affecting you, right? So normalizing that is just so important as well, because nobody needs to, and say the word suffer, but you only really suffer if you do it alone. Otherwise, it's a shared burden that we can push through and brainstorm. Like when you have a PPC issue, you ask your mates, you are your agency, your experts or people you respect.
Yeah.
Why can we not do the same with, life?
I think what it is with it is, can you trust that person enough that you've shared that information with, and will it be used against you in the future? That's always the risk. I'm not saying that they would, but that's always going to be a sticky point. Or are they embarrassed to say it because they're perceived as this, but this is going on, right? And it doesn't match what's over here, right?
Or sometimes people don't say it not even because of fear, but because they don't know what it is, and that's also okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're having a struggle, you can reach out to us. I'm just putting you out there now, Kata. Like, I didn't ask, but boundaries.
I do miss it, but rest assured that if I do reply, it's because I want to. So I always say, if I'm talking to you, it's my conscious decision. So happy to, of course.
Yes, of course. Yeah, like exactly. The boundary is a conscious decision. You might not go back to something there, but then you see it as an importance in terms of karma, helping others, taking great, gratitude in the fact that someone would actually ask you and trust you enough to be vulnerable with that, and you respect that as well. So I think what you got to look at is, I think not everyone, but a lot of people have had a tough year. I know they dress it up in social media and you get the highlights. But I think across the board, the Amazon community has been affected, right? Yeah. And they've had to find means and ways to make the shift. And some are going to come out at the 22nd of December not where they want to be, and some might be leaving the game, and some might have excelled. But at the end of the day, it's like, you don't fail until you quit. You win and you learn, but you don't fail until you quit. And the quitting would be your decision. It doesn't mean that you have to keep going out on your shield to the point of having a heart attack. But what I mean by quitting is that taking time out and readdressing the situation is actually smart, rather than keep pushing and pushing and pushing
100%.
against something that you're pushing against, which inevitably you're pushing away. Sometimes taking a big step back isn't quitting; it's taking a step to re-strategize and come again.
In regaining that confidence, because remember that when we talk about wealth, which we do a lot in the industry, it's not related to how much money you make. And this year, there were so many factors beyond your control that one couldn't truly affect, right? Or foresee or forecast for properly. But there is one thing where you can become incredibly wealthy, which is using that downtime of everything else that's been taken away from your direct impact control to work on yourself and go as even stronger. We don't waste time. We don't just sit down and let it happen to us. We can do something with that downtime. And that is in the form of growth as a business person individually, which won't be reflected on your P&L, but you will make eventually smarter decisions in the next 12 months because of that growth.
Yeah, I think the biggest investment in life, whatever you can do, is if you invest in yourself to improve yourself, then that pays the biggest dividends, whether that's for you, your family, your children.
Nobody can take it away, right?
No, that's it. No one can take it away. But yeah, I think this has been an interesting year for sellers. And there is a lot to play for. But I think what it is as well, we go through the cycles, right? Every 7 to 10 years is a cycle. And I think we're on the verge of a big cycle in terms of what's going on with AI, the way that search is moving on Amazon, the pace of which the changes are now coming in, going back to Amazon, Rufus and everything else, the way it's changing, more sophistication in terms of managing cash flow, logistics, the factories. I think we're moving to a more data-led rather than gut reaction, right? More about feedback and getting that important information. And really, it's like, how do you dial out all the other noise and focus on what truly matters? And where are you getting your information from that truly matters? Because there's so much information.
That's so much distraction.
Yeah. So I think if we wrap here, I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. And we'll see you guys back in the new year. But as I said, you don't have to be alone. You know how to reach us. Do you want any final words?
No, just, I hope everybody makes the most to be with people they care for, with their loved ones, and take their holiday time to be very inclusive, to stop a minute and recap on what is it that you excelled at this year. Again, not related to the business per se necessarily, but it will really inform the areas that you need to focus on for next year and get back on the horse, because to me, it's still the biggest opportunity out there there is to have.
Absolutely. All right, guys, take care of yourself and your family, and I'll see you again in the new year. Take care.